Welcome, everybody. Good morning. Coming at you live from New York. This is Spirit Matters, your daily Bhakti Center podcast. We are so glad that you are here. My name's Dayal. I'm here with Achyuta Gopi and Kishore Chandra, your regular crew, bringing you daily reflections from the Bhagavad Gita to keep you guys connected. Because as we discussed yesterday, spirit matters. And we want to check in with each other and give a little dose of spiritual reflection to get us going with the rest of the day. And thank you for listening out there. Every day or often I'm at the Bhakti Center and I meet somebody who's tuning into the podcast or out there. If you want to connect with us, as always, you can write to us at spiritmatters@bhakticenter.org. Share your story, let us know you're there, or ask questions that you want us to bring up on the show. We always love hearing from you guys. How's everybody doing? How are we?
Good, no complaints.
Good, no complaints, because we only share the complaints.
I am here and I am here.
And he's here. That's it. We get short and sweet updates. I like that mug you got, Kishore. What is that from? Where's that from? Colombia? Ecuador?
Ecuador, yeah.
Ecuador. Beautiful. Okay. So it looks like we're just gonna roll right into the Bhagavad Gita, right? That what we're doing?
Yes, sir. We're talking about the senses.
We're talking about the senses. We're talking about the boat, right?
Yeah, we're up to verse 68, which is kind of a summary.
I'm on the wrong chapter in my book. Chapter 2. So those tuning in, we're reading the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2. It's a long chapter. It's the second longest chapter in the Gita, second to only chapter 18. But we're nearing the end of it. And we read verse 67 yesterday. And today we're getting to verse 68. Verse 68 of the Bhagavad Gita. All right. Who's going to do it?
I can do it.
Sure, volunteers.
So it says, Krishna says, "Therefore, O mighty armed, one whose senses are restrained from their objects is certainly of steady intelligence." And and I'll read the purport because it's very short and it's very nice as well. Srila Prabhupada says, "One can curb the forces of sense gratification only by means of Krishna consciousness, or engaging all the senses in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. As enemies are curbed by superior force, the senses can similarly be curbed not by any human endeavor, but only by keeping them engaged in the service of the Lord. One who has understood this, that only by Krishna consciousness is one really established in intelligence, and that one should practice this art under the guidance of a bona fide spiritual master, is called a sadhaka, or a suitable candidate for liberation."
There's a lot there.
There's a lot.
Where are you guys going to go with that? What comes up for you? Where does that sit with you? How does that relate to your life?
Well, I guess I'll kick us off. I just really like this, that Srila Prabhupada in the purport is saying that, where was I just read it and I can't find it, that not by any human endeavor are we going to be able to curb these senses and unrestrained desires that sometimes take us, in so many places. And I think that that's so humbling. We were talking about this, I can't remember if it was yesterday or if it was last week, I don't know, but we were talking about like this idea of this world, of this material world not being necessarily a place that we are going to fix. I think we were talking about it yesterday. And that oh yeah, I was talking about this, that that there might be a desire to want to fix people or fix situations or fix things or fix ourselves or just fix, control. And Srila Prabhupada so aptly and nicely here is saying, like, you're not going to get anywhere all on your own. You can't actually do it just by your human endeavor. Like there's a missing part, and that part is Krishna. It's taking shelter of the Lord, and that's that, you know, process of bhakti yoga that will be spoken about later in Bhagavad Gita. But it's just such a good reminder, you know. It's like, I can't do this on my own. I'm not the controller. I can't fix everyone else, can't fix the world. And just by myself, like just with my human, you know, potencies, I can't even fix myself. Like I need superior guidance.
What you thinking, Achita?
I think to piggyback on that as well is just to add in that those times when you wind up thinking the most like, I can't do this, Krishna's like, yeah, it's normal, no one can. Everybody that you think has it together probably doesn't. And so that's comforting. That, because sometimes it can just feel like uphill battle after uphill battle. But sometimes it's comforting to allow ourselves to rest in the fact that this is normal. The breakdowns are normal.
I was pulling out, and I appreciate what you're saying a lot, Kishore, about that we're not alone and we can't do things alone. And you know, there's two. Uh, Krishna appears as the guru in two ways in our hearts. There's the Chaitya guru in the heart, and then there's the guru in that comes through a person, you know, through another human being in this world that acts as a teacher. And so and those two work together. So we have that, you know, that inner sense of guidance that comes internally that we could only tune into. It takes a lot of there's a certain level of developed purity within to get so that we can actually see that, hear that frequency internally, and not just and be able to distinguish it from our mind or from our ego. I don't mean purity from a sense of like worthiness or being better than other people, but like purity in the sense that you would think of like a glass of water that, you know, when you look into a lake and you want to see the bottom of the lake and what's down there at the bottom, like let's say you lost your ring in a lake and you want to look into that lake and be able to see that diamond that's there at the bottom of the water. If the water is very pure and clean, you can see right through it and you'll be able to see to the bottom and locate where that ring is. But if it's very, you know, filled with dirt or filled with moss or filled with other things, you're not going to be able to see clearly. And so on that level, just removing all of the desire and the ulterior motives and whatever is there in the heart allows us to, because otherwise it's like, you know, I mean, the scariest thing you ever can hear from somebody is God told me to do it. You know, it's like the scariest thing you can ever hear, because it's like, oh, okay. It's like, how do I know what is my inner guidance and voice, and how do I know what's just my ego crowding the frequency, or my desire, or my senses, or my mind, etc. And so in order to be able to distinguish that, we need help from other people outside of us to give us perspective, people who know us, people who also have a certain level of inner purity, of clearing away those things in the heart. And that's why I think so much attention has been given to that previously from these verses about the qualities of a spiritually minded person. You know, that kind of person is able to tune into that frequency. That kind of person is able to give proper guidance in terms of the direction and decisions of your life. But speaking spiritual guidance, what Prabhupada says, under the guidance of a bona fide or qualified or a tuned in spiritual master or spiritual teacher. And I think that what I love, Prabhupada uses this word, and he uses it often in other places, is this art. He describes it like an art, because it means that what we're getting in the Bhagavad Gita is broad, universal principles that get applied in very unique ways according to the time, place, and circumstance of every individual. And so when we look at what does this mean for my life, you know, some people ask like a question like, what does this mean for my life? Well, it's like we have to look at your life to understand that more deeply. You know, Krishna knew Arjuna very, very well. Krishna knew Arjuna's nature. He knew his backstory. He knew his circumstances. He knew the ins and outs of his life and was able to give a very specific instruction. When it comes to somebody else or in a different phase of life, we have to be willing to understand that the way things apply to my life, this season of my life, may be different than the way it applies to someone else in their season of life. It may even be different than the way I applied it in my 20s and the way I apply it in my 40s and the way I'm applying it now. And so I think that there's this determination and sincerity to like be very vigilant in how we apply spiritual principles, but then the surrender and the openness to that it's going to look different at different times, and we have to it really is, it's a science and it's an art. Prabhupada says practice this art under the guidance of a bona fide spiritual master. So I was just thinking of that word, that art of like being sensitive, being mature, being open-minded, being continuously reflective, having people that are giving us perspective, and knowing that it's not a cookie cutter formula that just like, you know, we just put on a t-shirt and everyone follows the same way. That's what I got. And that's it. Thank you everybody for being here on the show. We appreciate you. We love you. And
I agree with what you're saying. You know, Krishna, Srila Prabhupada mentions this many times, the art of it. And I really like that you kind of pick that apart a little bit, because in a way, you know, bhakti and spirituality can seem really simple, and in a way it is. You know, it's just like do things for Krishna and worship Krishna and understand that I'm connected to something higher than me, and serve that soul in each and every other person, see them as, you know, it's like it's very simple in a sense, but then at the same time there is a lot of complexity to it, because this line, and I've made this point many times before on the podcast, but I will make it again. This line about let's see, as enemies are curbed, yes. Oh, that you can curb the forces by engaging the senses in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. So that sounds really beautiful. Like it's a, yes, I'm going to engage my senses in worshiping Krishna, you know, like that sounds great. But it's a fine line, right? Because you can say, in a sense, you can say, well, I'm doing this nonsense here and there, but you know, it's for Krishna. I'm engaging my senses and doing it for Krishna. So it's not just like there is an art to it, and there is a practice to it that has been laid out by our acharyas, by our great teachers in the past. Because this term, again, I'll make the point again, this term yukta vairagya, which means I can do things in the service of Krishna, or I can dovetail my material sensibilities or how I'm engaging with the material world in Krishna's service, which is 100% true. I can dovetail using my phone in Krishna's service, but I can also use my phone to plunge me deeper into the depths of this material world and illusion and Maya. And so really what's then important is the intention of the user, or the intention of the person who's using this phone or the material apparatus. And that's where the complexity comes in, of like the art, you know, how do I learn that? How do I learn how to control my senses so that I don't just like doom scroll for like 2 hours and I'm like, oh yeah, that's right, Krishna's, I'm trying to practice Krishna consciousness. That's right. Okay, let me put my phone down, you know? And as opposed to that, actually use my phone for Krishna consciousness. And that's something that's, I like that you use these words, like it's very unique. It's very specific to each and every person. Each and every person has their thing, you know, whether it be the phone, whether it be the person, whether it be the whatever it is that's pulling our senses towards it so much that it feels like we can't even control ourselves. And that's where that bona fide spiritual master, that teacher, comes in to be like, no. Like you thinking that you're doom scrolling for 2 hours is for Krishna. That's not for Krishna. That's that's for you, you know, or like that's you getting in yourself into trouble. And sometimes I've really appreciated, like, you need that outside person who can kind of like see the lay of the land and see what's going on with you, because sometimes you're so in it that one you might not see it. Two, if you do see it, you might minimize the issue. I only doom scrolled for 5 hours yesterday. It's like totally fine. It's not a big deal. I still love Krishna. It's fine, you know. And it's like you might minimize it, and so it is really helpful to have that person, you know, whoever that teacher is in your life, to be like, hey, we need to talk about this. Like, this is not beneficial for you. This is not sustainable for your bhakti practices, you know? So it's really fascinating. It's simple, but complex at the same time. And yeah, but Achita, I saw you laughing. I want to hear what you got to say.
Doom scrolling.
I was going to say, how do you go about establishing the supposed safe space of a bona fide guru? Like, I mean, it could be anybody who comes up to you and says, you know what, I think I'm seeing in you. When do we and how do we balance it out? When do we feel like it's Paramatma speaking as Chaitya Guru from within the heart? And when do we understand and decide that, yeah, okay, I don't really have to listen to this person, this is Joe Schmo? When is Joe Schmo almost like an instructional guru? And when is Joe Schmo just whoever Joe Schmo chooses to be?
I like Joe Schmo. Joe Schmo is such a good term.
Joe Shmoananda. My name is Joe Shmoananda Maharaj, and I'm your guru. Okay, Joe Shmoananda, how controlled are your senses? How long did you spend doom scrolling yesterday?
No, but really, and even in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's time, there were people who were even his seniors, and we are talking about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, godfather of Kirtan movement and supreme personality of Godhead, and there were people who would walk around checking up on how much people were eating, checking up on how much money they had in their bank accounts, checking up on all of the things, because they considered themselves the Dharma police. So when do you look and say, okay, I can establish this as a safe spiritual space, and I can take this person's either comments or observations or even criticisms, and when do we actually look within and say, okay, now the point of Chaitya Guru is that it does speak to you from the heart, from within as well. So when, especially when we see differing opinions or views, because we can be really quick to just say, oh yeah, that's just my ego talking, I should just be more humble, because sometimes you are taught that and it is almost like broken down into your psyche. So when? It's a very interesting question for leaders and for those who are really good at being humble and following as well. Like it's a good question for both. Puts a lot of responsibility on everybody.
Is that a rhetorical question, or you have an answer, or someone want to say something, or am I supposed to say something?
You say something.
I think Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself gave a really beautiful formula in Trinadapi Sunichana Torori Vasihishana Amanina Manadina Kirtaniya Sadahari. The idea of no matter what level we're on, whether we're just a newbie figuring things out, or whether we've been around for decades, we should always be humble, more humble like the blade of grass, tolerant like a tree, offering all respects to others and not expecting any respect in return. And sometimes as part of our service, we might have to correct somebody, or we might have to instruct somebody or take care of somebody. but it's always in that mood of being a servant. And so Srila Prabhupada's Guru Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, anytime any of his disciples or aspiring disciples would come to accept him as a guru, he would say Tahasosmi, I'm your servant, you know, or, you know, there are people today that I know that somebody wants to be them to see them as a guru figure, and their response is, however I can serve you. And those could be just words, but then they can also be very heartfelt, um, heartfelt and meaningful. And so I think that when you have to be able to, and it's tricky, and that's why I think Prabhupada said it's an art. You know, traditionally speaking, I mean, now today we live in a world where, in an age of travel and a global, I don't want to say global economy because we're not talking about economics, but just a global world, a global world. We live in a global age. I don't know, or the world is connected in ways that it didn't be before. Um, you know, you have gurus and teachers that have thousands of disciples or travel all over the world and might be inaccessible. So it's hard to spend personal time to get to know somebody. But traditionally speaking, ages ago, a student would go and spend, you know, like a year living with a guru to for them to observe each other, for the guru to observe a student and to see if there is somebody that they want to take on and under their wing, and for the student to observe the guru to see if not just if they're advanced or not, but to see if they're the right fit for them personally. And so I think that we sometimes judge one's qualification as a teacher just by, you know, the way we might judge a professor, like, okay, well, they've been teaching for 30 years or they have all these degrees and therefore they're advanced. But it's also looking at character, looking at how they conduct themselves, looking at how the interactions with each other feel, and using that formula that the Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave. When you look at the cases that you reference that you to go be from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's life, they don't pass the smell test of Trinadapi Sunichena. There was clearly something off in that department.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up, Dayal. I was going to make that point that, you know, first verse of Nectar of Instruction tells us, Vachovegam, Manasakrodavegam, etc., that like the person who is actually eligible to make disciples is the one who is able to control their anger, their mind, their senses, their stomach, their tongue, etc., etc., etc. And it's like, there's sometimes this culture of like, you see a spiritual teacher and people, of course, you pay your respects to them, but there's sometimes a culture of just like accepting whatever they say or whatever instruction they give you as like 100% true, even though they might not be your spiritual teacher. And I think that that's kind of like, I don't want to use the word, what word should I use? I feel like that's kind of like sticky territory, because it's like, how do I know, you know, okay, you're a spiritual teacher, so of course I'll offer my respects to you, but how do I know that this person is, you know, passing the smell test, as you said, Doya? Like, how do I know that? And I think that there's been a lot of disappointment, not just in every spiritual community. There's been a lot of disappointment when we put our faith in people with this kind of, it's almost like a given, like, oh, okay, they're in that position, so therefore they must be as such. But then, you know, you realize like, oh, actually, wait a minute, they might not be. And then that creates a lot of discord, which is a whole conversation for another time. But I think it's really important what you brought up, Dayal, about like back in the day, you know, people would really study the guru and the guru would study the student. And I always tell people, you know, a lot of people will ask me about like taking guru, or they want to take the same guru as I have, or this or whatever, like what should it? And I always tell them, I'm like, whatever you're doing, just hear from them, just listen from them, like for a year, like literally, like for a very long time, just hear what they have to say. Because if and go back, like go back to the 80s, go back to the 90s, go back to the 2000s, because they might say something that all of a sudden might be you know, a what's this, you know, it might hit the wrong way, and you might need to have that resolved before you go into something, you know. And I've had a lot of people reach out to me who've already taken that step of guru discipleship, and then they've hit the thing, that the conflict, and they're asking me, how do I resolve this? And I'm just like, oof, well, ideally you would have known this beforehand, but now you're in it, so okay, let's have this conversation. And so it's such an interesting thing how we put our faith in people, which I think it is an important, and it's a natural human function to put our faith in something, to put our faith in God. It's actually the nature of the soul. But when we're then putting our faith in the representative of God, or the representative of Krishna, it's like, it behooves us. It behooves us to understand if they're the right fit for us, if they're the right fit for us, and if we're the right fit for them. Because if you don't do that preliminary work, you might set yourself up for disappointment. Achyuta.
Muted. I was muted. How do I fix this problem? Well, you need a time machine. You need to go back and make a different choice. Then come back and talk to me. Oopsies.
I think, and maybe every so often, the empath in me soaks up a little too much. And I think that it is, no one knows how heartbreaking it is to have put your faith in the wrong people. And I think that it is not something to be considered lightly, nor is it something to be counseled lightly, because you're not preached to as though you have all the time in the world. Second chapter of Bhagavad Gita, it is being stressed even from the beginning. Find a guru, find a guru, find a guru. And you're looking around at a movement of people who have just found a guru and just, I've got it. And everyone seems like they've just got it. And then you ask people, well, how did you just get it? And it's the most ethereal answer. Right? You just know, when you know, and you feel it. And so not only are you trying to feel out totally new spiritual territory, you're trying to feel out a totally new spiritual person. And not everybody has the same access. Not everybody has the same opportunities. Because yes, before you could live with a guru for a year, test them, learn from them. If you were male, if you were female, you had to really put your faith in Krishna and hope he was going to guide you through whoever you were with, sometimes in a relationship, to the right spiritual person. So even now, you are not preached to as though you have all the time in the world. Now it's, life is short, find your guru. Well, who am I supposed to choose as a guru? Some people didn't even have that choice. For some people, it was, this is the guru of this zone. This is the guru you're getting initiated by. So I feel like it's not as easy as simply telling someone, it's okay, go get a time machine, go back, make a different choice. For some people, that choice was never given to them. And it's heartbreaking. So when do we balance trying to find, and not even just guru figure on a pedestal, but also the everyday gurus, the ones who are like, hey, I don't think your Krishna consciousness is up to where it should be. And sometimes we're supposed to take that as Krishna speaking to us, but sometimes we're all supposed to take it with a grain of salt. And I feel like this is also the question that Arjuna is asking, because there are people that he was taught his entire life to put his trust in. He was taught that these are the people who are going to teach you. These are the people who know right from wrong. We've listed them out for you. We've already vetted them. And those were the people that disrespected him and his family, that aided in incredibly immoral acts. So now he's standing facing every single one of his fears on a battlefield. What if I choose wrong? And now the consequences of that choice are all standing before you. And Krishna is saying, kill them all. Well, how? I've been taught to revere these people, worship them. So I think it gets very, very complicated and convoluted. And so sometimes I feel like taking into account a whole person's life, I've seen it in people's eyes. And when they're questioning what they've put their faith in, it is almost like a nervous breakdown, exactly like Bhagavad Gita. But sometimes it starts from the beginning. Are we telling people, you've got time? It's okay. Are we telling people, you know how you do it? Here's a step by step. Because usually nothing comes with a step by step. We get a service at a temple. Well, how do we do it? Oh, just going in there and get started. So many times I was cooking for Radha Govinda. First time I arrived there was no one there. It's like, where are where are even the ingredients and the cooking utensils? It's okay, you're gonna figure it out on the job. When are we able to create groups and sanghas where we can talk about it really bluntly, honestly, blatantly? When people are saying, but seriously, but like, how the heck am I supposed to do this? Okay, now that I've already done it, now how do I deal with the rest of my life? And this constant cognitive dissonance, a feeling as though I've made the wrong choice. That is just my little empath train, choo-choo train that could.
Choo-choo train that could. There it is. A choo-choo bringing us all home. Choo-choo, all aboard. Thank you, Chuta, so much. Let us that be the place where we turn to Kimberly to wrap up for us and get our takeaways. What do you got for us, Kimberly?
Thank you. Today I got that we're not alone and we can't do things alone. We need superior guidance. That applying spiritual principles is an art. It's not cookie cutter and it applies to us all uniquely during different seasons of our lives. And then lastly, to hear and check if the guru passes the smell test.
Smell test.
Smell test.
Smell test.
All I see is people walking around smelling spiritual people now.
Hmm.
Trying to figure out if they pass.
Must I think he uses Tide. Closing words.
I'll just say that I think it's so important for these spaces that we have, Spirit Matters and the Bhakti Center, because I know that the norm is not, telling people they have time or telling people to investigate. And, I've had the experience at the Bhakti Center where it's like, I have had close friends to tell me like the opposite. Wait, see what's up, find someone who really resonates with, who understands your situation. And so I feel like the Bhakti Center is such a wonderful global kind of space, because so many people understand that mood that we have, and they resonate with it, and they reach out and they're like, what should I do, or how should I approach this, and they might be like in India or in, I don't know, South America or whatever, and they're asking us, and they're asking our community, like, what should I do and how should I approach. And so I'm just really walking away with how important this space is. I feel so supported here by all of you and all of the listeners, and just the Bhakti Center as a whole, how important it is.
Same. I think it is a unique place. There are not very many places like it in the entire world. So it's a very, very fortunate position that we're all in. I think also we can remember that Chaitya Guru, the Guru of the heart, speaks not only through other people, but also from within. You don't have to abandon yourself and all of your discriminating faculties in order to seek out spirituality. This is a process of rekindling. So it's not something that you didn't have before.
I would say you should never surrender your intelligence. So I'm walking away from Kishore. I'm walking away with the doom scrolling, and just keep an eye on that. And from Achyuta, I'm walking away with an increased sense of compassion and sensitivity to what people go through and the stories. It's easy to look at someone's life and say you should have made better decisions, but to actually put yourself in those in their shoes during the time they made those decisions and how difficult or impossible some of those decisions were, and allowing that to increase our sense of compassion for other people. And so I appreciate that as well. And I appreciate all of you guys for listening, for being here. Thank you all so much, both our live Zoom audience and those tuning in from wherever you are. We're grateful for you. We love you, and we look forward to tuning again tomorrow, same time, same place. In the meantime, take care, everybody, and be well. Bye-bye.